Excellent. Okay, so good morning. Welcome. Maybe, my name is Minna. I'm a former member of Parliament for Beaches, East York, and former Minister for International Cooperation. Maybe some of you can kind of move down and make us feel a little loved down here, so you're not so far away. How about that? Is that? So that's good. Excellent. And you don't have to, obviously. I see some of you would rather not move down. Okay. Welcome to the meeting this morning. I would like to tell you a little bit about who we are, the GTA Liberals are. The GTA Liberals is basically a group of people who got together some time ago to pull together all of the Greater Toronto Area Liberal Associations in the Greater Toronto Area, so that we could pull together and address issues collectively in the City of Toronto and raise the profile and go after issues and try to make a difference as associations. And we have it in the, so this is one of the meetings to discuss issues. We have had one in October. We will have other town hall meetings in the next several months and in the next year on issues that may come up this morning we want to follow up on, or other things that we think are important to our city. Specifically, we're focused in on the Greater Toronto Area, but that doesn't mean that the issues are local. The issues can be local or provincial or national. In this case, obviously, it hits all three levels, because while immigration is a national issue in terms of the rules and laws of immigration, it is a provincial matter as well, because that's where a lot of the services are delivered, and then, of course, municipal, because, again, that's where a lot of the services are delivered. So it hits all levels. Some of the members of the, as we call ourselves, GTA Liberals Committee are here with us today. I see William over there. William Walker sit down as a member. Ernie Listwig and Omar. I don't know. Where did I see Ernie? He's over there. He's here. Then who else is Ryan, who's taking up the red shirt? I should have known. And our friend from the community, why is my mind going blank? Mubarak, I'm so sorry. Mubarak stand up. Mubarak is also representative, a regional representative of the Liberal Party of Ontario. So he is a very active Liberal. And so I don't want to take too much time, because this is a very important issue today, so I want to get straight into it. Our speakers today, as you will hear from them, I will introduce them in a little while again and get them started. But Jim Karygiannis, who is the Liberal critic for Multiculturalism. Kevin Lamoureux, a member of Parliament, who is also the Liberal critic for Citizenship and Immigration. Kevin is a member for Winnipeg North, and as you know, that's in Manitoba. Then Michael Couteau, who's an MPP for Don Valley East. He also happens to be the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration in Ontario. So these are special, important people who are going to give us lots of good information today and get us started. Now, before we start, though, I want to let you know, most of you, I hope, have signed in at the sign sheets as you come in, so we can be informed of what we do. If you have not, the sign sheets will be coming around during the meeting, but I hope you've done that, or do so on your way out. Also, I would appreciate if you could turn your phones off or put them on vibrate or silent, whatever your preference is, so that we don't disrupt the meeting in the middle of it. And if you have to take a phone call, please take it outside. That will be kind to the rest of the people who are having a discussion. So that's pretty much all of the preparatory stuff. So now I'd like to introduce the Honourable Jim Karygiannis, who is going to make his presentation, but then also introduce our other colleagues as we go. But before I do that, I forgot, and my apologies, I need to introduce Judy Sgro, the Honourable Judy Sgro, who is a former Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, so this topic is very much up her alley. She's also the MP for York West. Judy is here with us. Rob Oliphant, who is the former member of Don Valley West, is also with us. Rob is over there. And so I think I've got everybody now. Have I missed anyone? No. Okay, great. So, Jim, it's all up to you.
Good afternoon, folks. I want to start by saying thank you for coming and welcoming my colleague from Winnipeg North. I've always said to him that the center of the universe is Toronto. He disagrees with me, says to me the center of Canada is in Winnipeg. But for those of you that have not visited Winnipeg, I say to you, do visit Winnipeg and do just, stay for a couple of hours and keep on driving. But Winnipeg is a lovely city. I want to start by saying to you that in this country, the philosophy should be that it doesn't matter what your background is, it doesn't matter what your religion is, it doesn't matter which corner of the world you come from. We're all equals. And if you look at the banners in the back, they have 4 words on them. It used to be that people say, I would tolerate you if you're of a different religion, I would tolerate you if you are different color. And one of the things that I always envision, and one of the things that I always like to do, is take the word tolerance completely out of the dictionary, eradicate it, delete it, push the button, and get rid of it. As much as I like to delete Mr. Kenny. And replace that with the word respect. Because when you respect each other as equals, when you respect your fellow man, we tend to move along, and it's not, I put up with you, but I respect you. I respect you as an equal. I accept you as an equal partner in Canada. I celebrate our differences and embrace our futures. Now, if you look close to those 4 words and just take the first 4 letters, ladies and gentlemen, we're all part of the human race. And starting with that, our immigration system should reflect what's truly dear to our hearts. It should reflect that, regardless of where you come from, regardless of what part of the world you're coming from, that the level of service should be the same. The length of time that it takes to process applications should be the same, and I'm going to let Kevin speak more to that. But the difficulty that I'm noticing is that people say, well, the ethnic communities left the Liberal Party in the last election and they didn't vote for you. No, it wasn't that they left the Liberal Party, it's that the ethnic communities just chose to stay home. We did not give them an alternative, we did not give them a vision. Maybe because we could have been there for a long time, but with a new leader, new engaged members of Parliament, we'd like to shape that vision with you. So this is part of a series of meetings that we're having across the country to listen, to understand, and to share with you some of our ideas and help ask you what ideas you want us to bring in 2015 as we come into the next election. Most of you were given a handout, and if you look at the Toronto Star today, the opinion piece, and how befitting, not that I had anything to do with it, I cannot influence Mr. Siddiqui, absolutely not, but he says, opinion, fire Jason Kenney. What more befitting for a day, us today, as we discuss immigration. At this point in time, I'd like to tell you that our multicultural policy is something that is going to be shaped up where we're going to reach into different communities. And it's not only the way that we celebrate multiculturalism up to today is song and dance and different food, and we would go to the communities and say, thank you very much for inviting us, and you're a great, vibrant community, and your food is good, and the kids are dancing great. Well, that's yesterday's multiculturalism. Tomorrow's multiculturalism is a little bit more engaging than that. What can we do with the ethnic communities? What can we do with the stakeholders? What engagement can we have as we shape up not only foreign policy, but as we shape up policy for the world? I'm going to give you a sort of a small caption. I was in Afghanistan years ago, and I was sitting it was the Women's Ministry of Women's Affairs, and we had a school, and I was sitting there, and I said to the young ladies that I was speaking to, I said, what can we do to change? The young lady comes, she must have been around 14, grabs my hand, goes outside and says, see all these trucks going back and forth? And these were UN trucks, WTO, and all kinds of trucks. She says, create industry that we can all be working in. And one of the things that I came back to Canada, I engaged the community and I said, what does this mean? They said, well, you're spending thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, of having NGOs that go over there, and none of the NGOs that go over there have Canadian perspective, like Afghan Canadians that are there to work with them in order to be able to deliver aid on the ground. There's nobody better to engage than communities in Canada, people of the different ethnic backgrounds, that they know firsthand what the differences are. We also have to engage in language study, because unlike the conservatives, we believe that language, especially first language, is important, the heritage language. Because if my kids know Greek, or my kids know Chinese, or my kids know Indian, there's nobody else better to do trade with the old country than they arrive, they hit the floor, they know the customs, the do's and don'ts, and they go and run. So that's the engagement that we're going to have with you. However, at this point in time, since it's an immigration meeting and not a multicultural meeting, I'm going to turn it on to Kevin, right? Yep. Fantastic. Kevin's got to catch a flight back to Ottawa. He stopped on his way through to Winnipeg. Winnipeg?
Winnipeg. Absolutely. The center of Canada.
Kevin joined us 4 months before the last election, so that was 2011, 2010?
2010, I think it was, Rob. That's when you were out there knocking on doors with me.
All right.
November, cold time.
And he is our deputy house leader, as well as our immigration guy, guru. He seems to know everything about immigration.
We enjoy immigration.
We enjoy immigration. So let's see how we can fire Jason again.
Thank you very much, Jim. You know, thank you. It's always encouraging when I get the opportunity to travel and meet with people. To me, meeting with people, getting a better understanding of issues has got to be our #1 priority. You know, it's great. We have this new leader. This new leader provides all sorts of opportunities for us. But one of the things that I really respect about what Mr. Couteau is saying is that at the end of the day, he wants us to work hard. And I can tell you that we have a wonderful, dynamic caucus in Ottawa that are committed to do just that, to work hard. And part of working hard means going across Canada, meeting with individuals, getting engaged on a wide variety of issues. So for those individuals that put in the time to make today possible, I thank you, because I think it's a great topic. Citizenship and immigration. You know, Jim was talking about the world. Well, let me give you a bit of a world perspective. You know, Canada is a trading nation. We depend on world trade. When the Liberals were in government, we had a huge trade surplus. That trade surplus was changed into a multi-billion-dollar surplus, into a multi-billion-dollar deficit in terms of trade. When you think of Canada and our position in the world from the past going forward, think in terms of immigration. Think in terms of the greatest asset that we have as a nation is the diversity in which makes up our population. And if we take advantage of that diversity of our population, then and only then will we be able to continue to hit the potential that Canada can hit if, in fact, you acknowledge that the world and Canada is a trading nation. Because as Jim says, you know, India is a booming economy. We have, within Canada, 900,000 plus in terms of growing within that Indo-Canadian community that has the direct connections to be able to make sure that Canada is able, and in a position unlike any other country in the world, to be able to capitalize on that. When I think of immigration and citizenship, I think of hope. I think of opportunities. Whether it's hope of individuals that want to be able, like our forefathers, be able to come to Canada and create opportunities for their local and for their families. And that is something in which I believe in. That's something in which the Liberal Party has believed in over the years. You see, there's a different attitude when it comes to immigration between a conservative regime and a Liberal Party regime. And you know, I've tried to figure out, well, what's a good way to be able to explain that? And maybe to use two examples. One of the best immigration programs we've seen in the last 20 years is known as the Provincial Nominee Program. And that's why it's great that we have the provincial minister here. The provinces have a critical role to play when it comes to immigration. And here's where we can really point the difference. Many of you are familiar with the Temporary Foreign Workers Program. Today we have over 338,000 people that are in Canada with the Foreign Workers Program. Now say whatever it is that you might want to think in regards to that program, I want to bring it to the province of Manitoba, a province in which I know best. Prior to getting elected, I was an MLA for over 20, or just about 20 years. The best federal immigration program, I would ultimately argue, that we have seen in the last 20 years is that particular program. If you go back to 1990, Manitoba, we would used to have immigration numbers in and around 2,500. We might get up to 3,000. We were able to take that number and almost quadruple it, so that Manitoba would now get somewhere in the neighborhood of 12,000 plus immigrants in any given year. During the 90s, I used to argue that, look, we should be shooting for a target of 1% of our population as a target in terms of where it is that we could ultimately try to hit. Back then, people say, oh, no, you can't do that, 1% is too high, and so forth. Today, relatively speaking, we don't have the oil of Alberta or the potash and oil of Saskatchewan. Manitoba is kind of like a mini Ontario. We've got a healthy manufacturing industry that we have to feed in order to try to get it to grow. All sorts of diversification that gives us some strength. But it's been the provincial nominee program that has enabled Manitoba to do as well as it has over the last 10, 12 years. Because when the Chrétien government introduced the program, Manitoba came to the table and said, we want in. It's an economic program. And through that program, we've been able to see our numbers do exceptionally well, and our province has done exceptionally well. Now, look at the temporary foreign worker program. Everywhere in Canada, including Ontario, the temporary foreign worker program has exploded. Whereas in the province of Manitoba, it's remained relatively stagnant. It hasn't really increased. It's stayed around the same. Now, why is that important? Because, you see, I believe that the Liberal Party has demonstrated in the past that we believe in immigration. Immigration that helps our economies. Immigration that assists in family reunification. So if you take a look at the province of Manitoba, you will see that the number of temporary foreign workers has remained stagnant, and it's because the nominee program has allowed the province to be able to capitalize on those industries that need the workers and bring them in along with their families, which has created other potential opportunities for us as a province. Now, compare that to the province of Ontario. The province of Ontario is a province that is in need, I would ultimately argue, of immigration and good, solid, sound immigration policy. And if we take a look at what's happening in Ottawa, that's not what's being delivered. The Manitoba's done well because we've taken advantage of a nominee program. Other provinces are only now starting to catch on to what Manitoba has been doing. And I suspect that you're going to see a huge demand for the nominee program. We've talked about that. We've seen the numbers increase over the last number of years in Ottawa. And now what you have is you have Ottawa, Minister Kennedy saying, no, we're freezing that particular program in favor of temporary foreign workers. Well, if you really want to develop and evolve into good, solid immigration programming, you need to be able to identify and work with the local levels of government, your provincial governments, and develop sound immigration policy that will ultimately allow the economies to continue to grow through immigration. And it can work. Ontario, Toronto has demonstrated success for many, many years. Well, that's what I mean in terms of a different attitude towards immigration. There's those of us that believe that if you're good enough to work in Canada and make that commitment to stay in Canada, well, you should have a stronger link that allows you to ultimately immigrate to Canada. And the response that we have received to that has been overwhelmingly positive. When we take a look at the decisions in terms of what the Minister of Immigration has done at the national level. We have seen a different attitude towards immigration policy. Many of you will recall when the minister put a freeze on the sponsoring of parents and grandparents. No discretion was given, just an absolute freeze. For many individuals, being able to reunite their families, having parents come to Canada is a positive thing. Parents are not a sore on society. If you take a look at the parents that often come through immigration, they provide a cornerstone of stability for the family unit. They often provide support for many family businesses. Parents come in all varying different ages. Not every parent that comes to Canada is 70 years plus. You'll get young parents in their late 40s, early 50s, that have much in many years to be able to contribute to Canada's economy, not to mention the social fabric. So when you think in terms of immigration policy, to have put the freeze on that program was wrong. And that is something in which we believe was a big mistake. At the end of the day, we need to have policy that has compassion, that is caring, and that does the right thing. And we haven't seen that with this particular minister. We've seen a minister that knows what buttons to push. You know, he can put his hand in the air and kind of detect where the wind might be blowing and say, this is what people want to hear. You know, when he put the freeze, it was November 4, almost 2 years ago, in terms of the freeze on the parents program. And what did he do? Well, he announced the super visa at the same time. So he would say to someone, well, don't feel bad, we're freezing the program, but at the end of the day, what we're going to do is we're going to have this 10-year super visa, so you'll be able to have mom and dad come to Canada for 10 years. And then 8 weeks later, he made the announcement of the details of the program. Try, if you will, to get a super visa if you're under an income or a household income of $45,000 or less. You have to buy the insurance, the health insurance. It can be very prohibitive, $3,000. You pay for return airfares, another $3,000. It becomes a very expensive proposition. But the announcement of the super visa overshadowed the freeze of the program. You know, we've had huge changes in refugee policy. You see the Prime Minister and Jason Kenney standing on the boat on Vancouver saying these are boat people and implying that there's all sorts of issues related to them, all in an attempt to get people to think negatively about refugees. And that's just wrong. Refugees, 95% and far greater than 95%, do exceptionally well and contribute to who we are as Canadians. Whether it's the Governor General, whether it's politicians, whether it's economic leaders, whether it's non-profit groups, in everywhere where we look, they play a very strong role in terms of the makeup of our society, of our communities. It's not the first time. You know, we had legislation that was introduced. The faster removal of foreign criminals. You know who the minister was talking about when he talks about foreigners? He's talking about landed immigrants. We have over 1.5 million landed immigrants today here living in Canada. And he's putting that bad taste in the mouths of many in terms of by making that sort of a statement. So you get a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old who graduates from a high school, goes across the border, and uses false identification, and as a result, he's going to be deported. The rest of the family can stay here, but he's going to be deported, even though he might have come to Canada when he was 3 years old. That's the essence of the type of legislation that we see. But the minister will take the other extreme and say, well, this is a cop killer, and this cop killer has to be deported, and this is the reason why we're bringing in the legislation. It is something in which this minister has to be held accountable for. You know, he has not been a friend in terms of positive immigration reform. And given the importance of immigration to our country, I don't think that we can afford to make the type of mistakes that have been made in terms of setting of immigration policy. You know, people come to Canada, they live in Canada. After being here for 3 years, they're afforded the opportunity to become citizens of our great land. You know, at one time, when they had taken government, it would take roughly 12 months, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but roughly. That waiting period now has gone to 2 years or more for 70% of those that are now qualified to be able to become a citizen. If they decide to do a residency check, now you're talking 4, 6 years in order to be able to acquire your citizenship. We've argued that ultimately a citizenship should be allowed somewhere within that 12-month range. That should be the target in which we should be able to process citizenships. Take a look around us at other countries and you'll see exactly how much it is and how long it takes in order to get a citizenship. The point is there's so much room for improvement. When the minister says that he wants to deal with backlogs, we need to be aware that this minister had the greatest backlog through Ministerial Instructions 1, where he created over 100,000 people in a backlog within 1 year. And then he says he's going to resolve the problem. What does he do? He hits the delete button. 300,000 people worldwide deleted from the data bank. You know, here's your $1,000 for your application, not to mention in terms of the cost they might have had through lawyers or consultants and so forth, but their dreams and aspirations after waiting 5 years has been taken away from them. He freezes a program. You don't allow people to put in applications, all so that he can say, well, I'm lowering the backlogs. There's a proper way of doing things. And this minister hasn't done the type of work that he could have done that would have made a much more positive impact. So anyway, the purpose, from what I understand today, is to get people thinking about citizenship and immigration. It's an area in which I believe that if the Liberal Party does exactly what our leader has asked us to do, and that is to go out, touch base, reach, connect with Canadians, that we have a lot on the issue of citizenship and immigration that's out there. I appreciate you taking the opportunity and coming out this morning. Thank you so much.
Let me put the microphone back up again here. Before I introduce Michael, I want to tell you of a story of a young lady and a young man. Second generation born abroad. After Lebanon, the minister brought in that you will be a Canadian if you're first generation born abroad. So if a Canadian individual works, he and his wife, and they have a child, and the child is born abroad, that child is automatically a Canadian. Should that child happen 20 years down the line, do the same thing as his parents did and work abroad, and be married, not to a Canadian, but somebody local, and have a child, that child is not a Canadian. So I know of 2 stories personally that I've talked to individuals. One story was a young man and his sister were born in Libya. Parents were teaching English in Libya. They were born in Libya. He grew up in Canada. He went to China to teach English. He met a young Chinese girl. They common law, and they had a baby. Now in China, if it's common law and you have a baby, that you cannot register the child, I understand. Well, because the child was second generation born abroad to a Canadian that was also born abroad, that child could not be a Canadian citizen. Well, his parents were Irish, the young man's parents, and the young child born in China got Irish citizenship. So what's the Irish? Canada couldn't do that. What brings us to today, there's a young couple. The father, the husband, is a military individual. 3 terms in Afghanistan. His wife and he were born outside Canada to parents serving in the military. Her parents, her father, was in Lahr along with her mother. This is the German, the base that we had in Germany back until 1991, 92. And his parents were teaching English to military children in Lahr. Both were born there. They come to Canada. They got married. They cannot have children. They sponsored a baby out of Haiti. If you're a Canadian and you sponsor a child, automatically that child is a Canadian citizen. Well, guess the irony. Here we have an individual that is 3 tours in Afghanistan. He and his wife were born outside to military parents, and that child is not a Canadian citizen. So they got advice to apply for citizenship, and they applied last August. And to date, immigration hasn't told them the straight goods. Come out and say, you know what, sponsor your child. And they're in limbo. That is what this minister is doing.